Hello, everyone. My name is Angela, and I am one of the instructors at Three Gates. I am also recently had taken on the role of the volunteer coordinator at Three Gates. So I wanted today to record a training, especially for those of you that are new to Three Gates, about volunteering. And I'm going to share my screen so that I can show you a little presentation that I've come up with. So first of all, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you can join us as a volunteer at Three Gates, and there are several ways to do that. What I'm going to be going over today is typically what we would cover in a sit-down portion of a volunteer training. We like to do it face-to-face so that we can get to know you, but we realize that with technology, it's pretty handy to be able to access something like this at home. So we are hoping that you can watch this on your own time. And I do ask that you please watch it till the end. I'm going to try to be concise with all of my information, but there's a lot of really important stuff in here and things that we are mandated to cover because we are members of PATH International, which is the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship. So we have some pretty strict standards that we have to stick to, and volunteer training is one of them. So first of all, again, my name is Angela. I teach therapeutic riding lessons at Three Gates, and I'm also helping out with some of the volunteer coordination. We have a pretty small staff at Three Gates for how many clients we have. So basically, Three Gates offers horsemanship activities to individuals with special needs that encompasses a very wide range of people with needs. And we usually in our peak of our, summer session, we'll have about 250 riders a week. And for that number of riders, we have less than 20 staff members. So we do have a full-time executive director named Dina, and we have a full-time office manager named Melissa. So chances are if you have called the office or emailed the office, you've probably talked to Melissa. And then we have an equine caretaker named Dana who covers taking care of the horses in the barn. Then we have a bunch of part-time staff, including both instructors and therapists. Our therapists are either occupational therapists or physical therapists, and they are also licensed, or sorry, not licensed. They are also instructors through PATH, just like I am. So that's who works at Three Gates. Like I mentioned, Three Gates is a therapeutic horsemanship center. So we open up 3 different types of programs to individuals with special needs. We do therapeutic riding lessons, which are lessons with the goal of teaching somebody how to ride a horse, regardless of abilities. So I like to say my job as an instructor is to make sure that I teach you how to ride a horse, and if you have something that makes it more difficult for you to learn to ride a horse, my job is to come up with a way to help you adapt to that difficulty and overcome that difficulty and learn to ride a horse. So for example, if I have a rider who maybe is stronger in their left arm than their right arm, I might give them a special set of reins to steer the horse that can be used with just one hand at a time. So that's an example of what therapeutic riding is all about. The therapists on our staff do something called hippotherapy, which is one-on-one with a client, and what they do is offer actual occupational therapy or physical therapy using the horse as a tool for movement. So that's a second program that we have out at Three Gates. And then we also have some unmounted activities too for riders who either choose not to or are unable to ride, where they learn horsemanship skills that don't involve riding. So that is what Three Gates is. I emailed you already a volunteer manual, and in that manual there's more background on Three Gates. Also on our website, www.threegates.org, we have things like the history of Three Gates. So if you're interested in that, please read up on it. Again, for the training purposes today, though, I want to get through information as concisely as possible. So how do volunteers help Three Gates? The vast majority of people who come to Three Gates to volunteer help out in our therapeutic riding lessons, and that's simply because that's the bulk of what we do. In any given week, we might have 160 riders for therapeutic riding and 20 riders for hippotherapy, so we need a lot of help for therapeutic riding classes. When you volunteer in lessons, what that means is a couple of things. Mainly, volunteers help us with grooming the horses, tacking the horses, and then in lessons, they are either a leader or a sidewalker. So a leader would mean that you're in charge of the horse. A sidewalker would mean that you are walking next to a student who is riding a horse and supporting that student as they need. In terms of schedule, our therapeutic riding lessons are typically Monday through Thursday evenings and Saturday mornings. We also have some programming now on Friday afternoons, and our hippotherapy program tends to be more during the daytime hours. So hippotherapy currently is Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays off the top of my head. Sorry about that. So for a time commitment, what volunteers typically do is they commit to coming at the same day and the same time each week. So for example, if you're interested in volunteering on Thursdays, you would sign up to come from, let's say, 4 till 8. That's when lessons are. Volunteer commitments typically average between 3 to 5 hours. It kind of depends on the needs of the lessons. And so volunteers will come to us every Thursday at that time for the duration of a session. We have a spring session, a summer session, and a fall session. They're all about 12 weeks long. We take a break for 3 or 4 weeks in between each session, and we take a pretty significant break in the winter, but that's how often people come and commit to volunteering typically. Now, again, there are some other scenarios, and I'll cover those in a second here. So I talked already about therapy and unmounted activities. Those also need volunteers. In the therapy sessions, the biggest difference is that you're working one-on-one with a client and one-on-one with a therapist, whereas our therapeutic riding classes range from 3 riders up to 5 riders typically. Sometimes it's a smaller class, 1 or 2, but the average therapeutic riding class is 3 to 5 riders. So there's a lot more people involved and a lot more people in the arena when it's therapeutic riding, whereas the PT and OT sessions are one-on-one, but the same skills are needed out of volunteers during those PT and OT sessions, which would be grooming and tacking, leading, and sidewalking. For the unmounted activities, volunteers assist us in things like supervising a horse while a rider is working with them, same thing, grooming, leading, but it's a little bit different because there's no riding involved. So the first time that you volunteer, regardless of what program you signed up for, I want you to pull into the parking lot at Three Gates and look for the small white building that is in the middle of the parking lot. If you go to the white building that's by the road, that's the house, that's where somebody lives, that's a private residence. So you want to pull actually into the parking lot, find the small white building, that's the office, and you'll see a main office door to go in. Inside the office, if it's your first time, there should be somebody there to greet you, but if not, I want you to know that there is a volunteer logbook immediately as you walk in on your left. And in the logbook, we keep track of who's at Three Gates and what hours they spend at Three Gates. So I want you to know that that's in the office. And after you stop in the office, you would typically head out to the barn, and we can show you all this in a tour or hands-on training. But in the barn, there will be a board that lists all the lessons, what horses are needed, who's riding that horse, what tack they need. And so typically volunteers go over to the barn, check that board out, and then if they need to, they can go to the indoor arena directly for lessons. Otherwise, they can stay in the barn and work on getting the horses ready. The biggest thing that I ask of you when you first volunteer is please communicate with us your comfort level. Sometimes people come to us with, years of horse experience and they're ready to lead on their first night of lessons, or they're very comfortable being around the horses and the cross ties in the barn. But we also get a lot of volunteers that have never even touched a horse before. So if you're not ready to do something, speak up. We're very, very happy to accommodate what your comfort is, and we also want to keep everybody safe. And it's never safe if you're doing something that's outside of your comfort zone. So please speak up and let us know, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, or I'd rather have a different role, and we're happy to do that. We do have a fair number of experienced volunteers that you can shadow. So after you go through this training today online, it would be great if you could find a time to come out and do some hands-on practice of skills before you start volunteering. But if that's not possible, we can have you shadow an experienced volunteer for the evening, so they can teach you things like, you know, this is where the horses go, this is where the tack is located. So speak up to us about that too. Couple more things on volunteering. If you are not able to commit time regularly to volunteering, there's a couple of options. First one is that we definitely appreciate when people can substitute for lessons. So what that would mean is you tell us, you know, I'm available Tuesday evenings or Thursday evenings, just give me a couple of days notice, and we would just contact you when we know we're going to be short on volunteers for that evening, and you would step in and substitute. That is extremely helpful for us because we try to accommodate our regular volunteer schedules, and we know that some weeks they're going to be gone. So we call in substitutes for those occasions. There are also plenty of other ways to get involved at Three Gates. Our facility is 20 acres and we have about 25 horses, and it takes a lot of work to upkeep the farm. So facility volunteers help us with everything from mowing the lawn to cleaning stalls, helping with chores, doing a project in the summer like weeding a certain garden bed. So if you're interested in helping out in the facility, we would love to have your help with that. We also have in our office building a lot of volunteer opportunities, things that have to do with the computer and paperwork, phone calls occasionally. We love help in the office if that's something you're interested in. We also, because we are such a small staff, we love it when people are willing to help us clean in the office. So if you're someone at home that doesn't mind, you know, the occasional vacuuming and dusting, please let us know if you'd be willing to help out with that in the office. Three Gates is a nonprofit organization, so we do a series of fundraisers throughout the year. If that is something that you'd be interested in, whether it's the actual organization of a fundraiser or just the day of, you're willing to show up and, you know, stand at a booth or help with, you know, the distribution of materials, let us know because we love fundraising volunteers. And then lastly, we hold some special events throughout the year. An example of this is on the 4th of July, we typically have an open show, which means that people from all over Dane County bring their horses into Three Gates and show in front of a outside judge that we hire for the day. So we need, you know, volunteers to do things like hand out ribbons and close the gates and sign people up for classes. And so we have a series of special events, and if that's something that you're interested in because you can't commit to volunteer regularly, we would love your help for that as well. A couple of things I wanted to touch on with working with our riders. Three Gates is a really cool place because we really see what people can do and not what they can't do. We work with riders as young as 2 years old and as old as 80, 90 years old, and really every sort of every sort of special need that you can think of. So one of the big things that we don't do at Three Gates is we don't put labels on people because we really want to see what they're able to do as an individual. And one of the terms that we frequently reference is called people first language. People first language is a way of speaking and thinking where you put the individual before their disability. So in a literal sense, when we're talking and using our words, we would not say an autistic child, we would say a child with autism, because we're recognizing that they are a person. So it's Joe with autism. It's not autistic Joe, because Joe is the individual and that's what's important. His disability is not what's important to us at Three Gates. What's important to us is helping everybody reach their riding goals. We really see a lot of strengths in riders and we encourage strengths in riders. And in terms of when you come to volunteer, just so you know, we don't typically discuss a rider's diagnosis with you unless there was something very medically pertinent for you to know for their safety. But what I would say to you when you come to volunteer is, hey, you're going to be working with Mary tonight. Mary does a really good job of using her reins to steer, but occasionally she can't hear me from the middle of the arena. So if you can repeat my directions, since you'll be closer to Mary, that would be great. So what I just did is I gave you the information that you needed to know, but I didn't give you information that you didn't need to know. And that's part of the way that we recognize strengths and individuality at Three Gates. We also ask for confidentiality, that you please share your experiences, because it is so fun to volunteer at Three Gates. And if you're talking to a family member or a friend, share your experience at Three Gates, and hopefully they will want to join the fun too. But what we ask that you don't do is please don't share specifics on riders or names of riders. You never know if you're sitting in a coffee shop and somebody behind you happens to be a family member of somebody at Three Gates, and they would overhear it, and that could breach confidentiality. So feel free to leave out names, share the positives, help us spread the word about Three Gates, and we would appreciate your help with that. And the last thing about working with our riders is that we really want to encourage every rider to be independent, but we keep safety as a top priority. So typically at the beginning of lessons, we'll tell you how to help and how not to help. But just so you know, we really want riders to do things themselves. We don't want to help too much, because we want to see what riders can do. Not what they can't do, but we want to see what they can do. So encouraging independence comes into play in a couple of ways, but one of the most common ways I would say that I notice volunteers encouraging independence is being okay with a rider making a mistake, so that a rider can learn from that mistake. You know, you might see that, oop, this rider is not going to steer around the cone and we're supposed to steer around the cone. It's okay, let it happen, because sometimes we learn from making a mistake, like, whoops, you didn't steer around the cone. We better pay attention to next time and get the next cone. The only time that we would ask you to really step in and not be as an encouraging of independence is if there was an immediate safety issue. So that's just kind of the mindset of Three Gates that we wanted you to be aware of. And up next, I do want to talk about emergency procedures. Unfortunately, this is kind of an uncomfortable part of the discussion, because we have to talk about priorities, and we love, love, love our horses. Our horses are so important to us, and what we do is the program, and guaranteed if you come out to volunteer, you will have a favorite and you will adore them, and it's just the nature of what we do. But we do need to recognize that in an emergency, we have to make sure humans are safe before we worry about the safety of our horses. So in terms of priorities, please keep that in mind. The biggest thing that we ask is that you stay calm and that you help us assist that all humans are safe and accounted for. So if there was ever a fire at Three Gates, again, please stay calm. But what we would ask is that everybody leave the area of concern, and the meeting spot for our evacuation would be the pavilion at Three Gates. That is something that we will point out to you when you are on a tour or hands-on training. In terms of severe weather or tornado, first of all, we do try to cancel lessons whenever there are weather extremes, and we'll talk more about that once you begin volunteering. But if it's above a certain degree, you know, in the summer it's too hot to have lessons, we'll cancel. In the winter, if it's too cold, we'll have lessons, we'll cancel. But also if we know there's severe, you know, weather threats in the area, we try to cancel in advance. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes things roll through when we're in the middle of an evening of lessons. So if there is severe weather or tornado, again, first thing we would make sure is that all of the humans are safe, and then we would look at moving horses to a safe area. But we need to meet in the office building. That is the most secure building on the property. We always tell people, you might think the house might be secure, but the house is very old. It's over 100 years old. So our meeting area for the tornado or severe weather would be in the office. Now, in the arena, rider falls happen, and we try our best to prevent them, but it's the nature of what we do that occasionally riders fall off horses. The biggest thing that you can do to help a rider fall is to stay calm, follow directions, and then be very careful about how we frame any incidents in our minds. And here's what I mean by that. If a rider falls off a horse, first of all, I need you to stay in your role. So if you are supposed to be the leader of a horse, please don't reach back and try to be a sidewalker or assist your rider, because your role right now is making sure that horse is accounted for, not the rider. And same thing, if you're a sidewalker, please focus on the rider, not on the horse. So if a fall happens, first thing is everybody stops. The instructor will ask everybody to stop. If you are on a team that did not have the fall, but there was a fall in the arena, we would just ask that you stay in your role, you support your rider, keep everybody calm. But if you are on the team that had a rider fall, we ask that you not touch the rider unless there's an immediate safety concern. For example, if they landed underneath the horse, we would need to move them, but if they're not in an area of immediate concern, leave them still so that the instructor can check them out. Administer first aid and CPR if need be. We're all trained in that. If you are the horse leader, you would want to make sure that you are keeping the horse at a distance from the rider, that you're not going to be creating more of an issue. Occasionally we have a loose horse in the arena, and if that's the case, make sure to follow the directions of the instructor. The leader would be helping us get the loose horse. Sidewalker would stay with the rider. So procedurally, that's how, it happens if there's a rider fall. But what I was talking about before with how we frame our mindset about falls, we have to be really careful, because sometimes if a rider falls off, they're pretty shaken. Usually they are pretty shaken. And if we approach them with words like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. That was so scary. We'll try so hard to make sure that doesn't happen again. And they can sense that we're really worried about the situation. They feed off of that. You can imagine what that's like, especially if you're a kid and you don't understand the situation. Like, ooh, that person's really scared. I should be scared too. So instead, what we try, if at all possible, to do is, have the rider get back up as long as they're not injured, and get back on the horse and continue, so that they can end on a more positive note. Again, part of the way that you learn to ride is through mistakes, and falls happen, and you certainly learn from falls. So 9 times out of 10, with small kids that land in a not injuring fashion, if we kind of phrase that as, ooh, are you okay? And if they say yeah, then let's get back on, let's do more, let's learn from this. It really helps the situation in terms of the rider's confidence and their riding in the future. So that's what I ask in terms of our mindset about falls. Now, how a fall can turn into a worse situation, number 1 is by panicking, for sure. Number 2, occasionally if one horse is having an issue, other horses will sense that and they will have an issue. If that was the case, we may call for an emergency dismount for volunteers who are comfortable helping us dismount riders. But again, people stepping out of their role, trying to help with a rider when they're supposed to be holding a horse, are examples of situation or ways that we can make a situation worse. So if you have any questions about this, as always, please talk to us. But those are kind of a basic overview of our emergency procedures. Now, we do want you to come out for hands-on training before you start volunteering, but again, if that's not possible, we will pair you with an experienced volunteer. But these are the components of hands-on training that you will need in order to volunteer. So in the barn, we talk about general safety around horses, putting horses in cross ties, reading their body language, how to groom them, how to tack them, and we talk about what happens if there's an emergency in the barn. And in the arena, we want you to know what a lesson looks like, how to lead a horse, where to stand when a rider is getting on the horse or off the horse, how to sidewalk, and again, emergency rehearsal for what to do in case there is a ride or fall. So hopefully you are able to sign up for a hands-on practice in advance, but if you're not, just so you know, these are the training components that we typically cover in the hands-on portion. Now, just to wrap it up, your next step to start volunteering, I will, if I haven't already, I will share with you a sign up for the current session, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So we just started using Google Docs as a way to sign up volunteers for sessions, and the directions are included right here, and I also have a short tutorial on how to use Google Docs if you're not familiar with that. But basically what you do is if you want to sign up, you're going to add your name to the chart. If you're able to substitute, you click here and the link will pop up underneath it. You can tell us about it there. If you need to update any contact information, like your phone number has changed, you tell us about it here. If you want to sign up, but you know you're going to be gone, you know, April 12th, you can tell us about that using this link. And then also we have a troubleshooting link if you're not able to get this document to work, especially if you're using your phone, that can be kind of challenging. So if you know what day or what evening you want to volunteer, you can click on one of these links. Otherwise, you can scroll through and look at where the openings are. The openings represent areas that we still need to find volunteers. Typically, Saturdays are the most difficult for us to recruit because, you know, it's the weekend. People have plans. So if a session is 12 weeks long and you are able to commit even 7 out of the 12 weeks, like anything over half, please sign up and then just tell us about which ones you're not going to be able to attend, because we are happy to find substitutes for, you know, certain weeks, but if you can help at all on a consistent basis on Saturday mornings, that would be phenomenal, because that is a very convenient time for riders to sign up, but not always a convenient time for volunteers. So your next step to volunteering would be to get on that list, and then we would send out a confirmation email right before the session starts just to confirm we have you on the list for Thursday nights. Here are the dates once again. We look forward to seeing you. So we would just ask that you arrive at the time that you sign up. Also, in the volunteer manual that I previously sent you, just a couple of things to point out. We had a section in there about what to wear. Always wear sturdy shoes at Three Gates. Tennis shoes are fine. We don't require that you wear boots. In fact, our volunteers do a lot of walking, so oftentimes they like to wear tennis shoes because they're putting on so many laps in the arena. Also, layers are a really good idea because you never know what the weather is going to bring at Three Gates. So bring options for clothing if you can. We ask, if possible, that you leave valuables and cell phones in your car when you arrive at Three Gates, because we don't want them to be a distraction in the arena, especially a cell phone going off in the middle of a class could, you know, potentially scare a horse. And then also, please keep us updated on any changes that you might have, because we like to update our database so that we are not trying to contact you at the wrong phone number or address. And lastly, if you have not already and you are on Facebook, please follow Three Gates on Facebook. And also, if you type in Three Gates volunteers in the search bar, you will see that we have a group just for Three Gates volunteers. We like to post how-to videos there, volunteer opportunities there, answer questions there. So that's been a really good tool for us for communication. So please join us if you can. If you have any other questions, please reach out to us. You can email me, volunteer@3gates.org. That's the numeral 3, GAITS.org. Or you can reach out to us on Facebook as well. So we look forward to having you. Thank you so much for being a part of Three Gates, and we hope that we will see you soon.